What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk to you about Warren Buffett's biggest mistakes, and I want to share with you how you can avoid these mistakes in your personal life so you can be a lot happier and more fulfilled, and also in your business so you can be a lot more successful and not leave money on the table and make sure that you're winning, whether you're in sales, whether you're an entrepreneur or business owner. These are some of the biggest mistakes and a specific type of mistake that Warren Buffett famously says he's made, and he always looks at those mistakes over others, and I want to share with you what those are. Before we dive into it, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course share this with somebody who's in sales, who's in business, and who you think would get some value out of it. So Warren Buffett has famously said that his biggest mistakes have always been mistakes of omission, not mistakes of commission. So let me explain to you what that means. It means that Buffett doesn't regret the mistakes that he's done, the things that he's done that then he realized those were mistakes, the investments he made, which then he realized he lost a ton of money on, or they were mistakes and he had to sell out of those investments and cut those losses and cut those ties. Those weren't the mistakes that he later looked back on and regretted. The mistakes that he considers real mistakes and that he regrets in hindsight are mistakes of omission, which means things he did not do, especially those of which he knew he should have. So this is a really interesting point. If you put some thought into it, most people sit there and they look back on their lives, they look back on their sales career, they look back on their business, and they're constantly living through these mistakes. I did this, I shouldn't have done it. I paid too much for this, I should have paid less. I hired this person, I should have fired them. These mistakes of things you've done. Whereas somebody as intelligent, as successful as Buffett is telling you those mistakes aren't even worth considering because it's things that you've done, they're lessons you've learned from them, or at least this is how I interpret it. Now you're getting into some of my own personal commentary on this, so take that with a grain of salt. But of course, it's the message behind what Buffett's saying as well. Those mistakes are mistakes that are in the past. You've done them, they're valuable lessons, you haven't lost, you've just learned and you move on from it. But the biggest mistakes, the ones that hurt, are the mistakes of omission, the mistakes of things you did not do, things you omitted, and especially those things that you knew you should have. Your gut instinct was telling you that you should have done this thing, you should have went for it, you should have taken action on it. Buffett goes on to say that these are the things that are the biggest mistakes. If it's within your circle of competence, if it's within your understanding, and you know it's something that you should be doing, you should be taking action on, that's a mistake if you don't. Buffett goes on to say that above and beyond mistakes of omission, things that you knew you should have done, it was within your circle of competence, but you didn't do it, above and beyond that, an even bigger mistake is doing that thing that you know you should do, but not going all in with it, only going half in or partially in to see how it goes, where really you know this is what you should be doing. This is the thing that you should be doing, and it's a decision that you should be making. And he says this as an example with his investments. He talks about certain investments he's made where the biggest mistake was he knew it was a great investment and he even bought into that investment. He bought a portion of that company or that business, but he didn't go all in when he knew he should have just made that decision and went all in with it. So the first part is mistakes of omission are the biggest mistakes, not things that you do. Those aren't mistakes. Those are just lessons you learn from. But above and beyond mistakes of omission is doing something that you know you should be doing, but not going all in with it, being hesitant, being reluctant. Those are the biggest mistakes. So those are Warren Buffett's self-proclaimed biggest mistakes in his career. And this is a man that's worth 90 billion and some change. So I would probably listen to what he has to say, or at least give that some thought and some consideration. And in hindsight, when I look at things through this frame and through this context, my own biggest mistakes are also mistakes of omission. Things that I knew I should have done, that I understood. It was within my circle of competence. I grasped it. My gut instinct told me to do it, but I still didn't do it. Or I did it and I took action on it, but I didn't go all in with it. And that's a good lesson for you all. And I hope that you start to look at what you're doing. First of all, forgive and forget the mistakes that you make and just treat them as lessons, learn from them and move on. and look at mistakes of omission from now on. Things that you know you should be doing that are within your circle of competence that you're not doing in your sales career, in your business, and especially in your life. This applies to all areas, and of course in your investments and in multiplying your money and wealth, which is where this concept actually comes from Buffett. So you can really apply this to all areas and all categories of your life. My hope for you is that you start to look at mistakes of omission within your own life and start to think with this context and not make these mistakes of omission. When you know you should be doing something, you should take action on something, you understand it well, it's within your circle of competence, do it, go for it, and don't just go hesitantly for it or partially for it. Go all the way, all in, get it done, and that's going to be something you look back on as a correct decision, as something that you did correctly, that you would be proud of yourself for, as opposed to looking back and thinking that was one of the mistakes of omission, something that I knew I should have done but I didn't do. I hope you got some value out of that rant. It's something that I personally enjoy, looking through this context, thinking with this idea in mind of mistakes of omission. I've always gotten value out of it in my personal life, and I just thought I would share it with you guys, and I hope you got a ton of value out of it as well. All that said, make sure to smash that like button. As always, it helps me out, it helps this video out, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and do me a favor and pass this forward, pay it forward. Share this with somebody. Share it with somebody who's in sales, who's in business, who you think will get value out of it. And all that said, I'll see you on the next video.